Yeah,
Okay.
I see
Hello,
that.
it's Anna Pacheco. It's SantaFe101.com. My guest today is Jamey Stillings, and he is the board president for the Commons on the Alameda in Santa Fe, which is a very unique type of retirement community or intergenerational community. Jamey, do I have your permission to record this interview?
Yes, you do.
Okay. And as I said before, I hit the record button. Oh, maybe about 10 years ago, I interviewed Alice Lattice, and I learned a little bit about the whole concept of living in your community. And she was a terrific interview. She's a terrific lady. And if I'm not, and I understand probably in the last 10 days, she celebrated her 100th birthday in Santa Fe.
That's correct. End of May.
Yeah, neat lady. So tell me a little bit about your time at the Commons, what your responsibilities as board president, as a board member, and the whole concept of this intergenerational living that may be of interest to people who watch this interview, and to find out if there are other communities like yours in this country right now.
So let me start with the concept behind co-housing. If you imagine your idyllic neighborhood, a neighborhood where you know all your neighbors, where you felt like you could depend on each other if you needed something, you would have some social events together, your kids would play together, and unlike a lot of neighborhoods, you might not necessarily have a street run down through the center of it. That's really what a co-housing community is about. It started in Scandinavia, and it's generally a community that is from, say, about say 50 or 60 people up to about 140. There's a range that seems to work well to have enough of a critical mass to form a neighborhood, and yet not so big that you don't know each other and really know each other by name, really, and face. So the Commons is structured on 4 acres. It's 28 homes. A lot of them have casitas that are either rented out, or they're office spaces or studio spaces for people. And so we're about 70 to 75 people in general. The youngest is now up to 4, and the eldest is 100. It is a multi-generational community. One of the challenges is that people grow up, kids keep growing up, so that the notion of kind of bringing young families is always part of the challenge in a co-housing community. But basically, we legally function as an HOA, like a condominium association, but we're more than that because it's an intentional community. It's a group of people that have decided that they do want to live together, and they want to live together as neighbors, where they balance being individual families and being in community. We, like other HOA committees, communities, have monthly board meetings and monthly business meetings. But those are not just oriented towards the have-tos about an organization, they're also oriented towards how do we improve our organization? Are we thinking about how to be more sustainable? Are we thinking about, say, right now we're looking at adding internet connectivity to the Common House, which is something we hadn't gotten around to. So, and we operate in general by a form of consensus. So we're really looking to, in our decision-making process, when we're putting proposals out to the community, to find the common ground as best we can to move forward with new ideas, new proposals. That's something that stands in distinction, I think, right now from some of the political divisions that we have in the country.
Isn't there something though? They say that, I guess, from like a health, it's healthier to be for the elderly to be in a generational type setting rather than just with a bunch of old people their own age. Or can you speak to me? Can you speak to that whole concept?
I can't give you any statistics on it, but certainly there's lots of information out there that says that it's much healthier for seniors to be living in a community of others, and especially in a multi-generational community. And what's interesting is that we are very much, again, I refer back to like our idyllic notion of a neighborhood. So if if you've got your kid out on the other side of the community, and he or she falls and skins a knee by falling off a bike, there's going to be somebody right there to be there. and to check and make sure they're okay and to guide them back to the house. And, you know, we're always looking out for each other. So yes, the seniors in the community, they love being involved with, we have usually two dinners a week that are common dinners that if you want to come join up at the Common House in the plaza, you can join, you don't have to. So we'll have anywhere from 20 to 50 people at a meal. And it's a time to share and laugh and do all of that. I can't imagine really in many ways, especially during the pandemic, what it must have been like for seniors living in a traditional neighborhood without a lot of relations with their neighbors. You know, we were able to do things remotely, grocery shop for people who were concerned about being out in supermarkets, people had special health considerations, a tremendous amount of cooperation, help among the community over the course of the last year and a half.
So I guess I'm assuming that this is what what the commons is. It's kind of like what life used to be in the old days before, you know, there was a lot of people living in senior housing. In the old days, it was probably multi-generational. There'd be the grandma, the parents, and the kids. And so that's kind of the same concept, right?
It's the same concept, though they might not necessarily, that multi-generational thing might not happen in the same household. It might not be your grandparents, it might be somebody else's grandparents, but it's the same type of thing. One of the little side notes that is fun, and I keep thinking there's something more advanced than email to do this, but one of the unique features about the community is, like, let's say that you're making chocolate chip cookies, and you go to your drawer and you either don't have brown sugar or it's hard as a rock. You put out an email and say, making cookies, I need 2 cups of brown sugar, and it'll be on your door within 5 minutes. Somebody in the neighborhood, in the community, will get it to you. Eggs or whatever. Your car won't start in the morning. You have a doctor's appointment, either give you a jump or loan you a car to get to the doctor's appointment. So there's a whole range of kind of being good neighbors with each other that I think many of us in traditional neighborhoods wish we had, or wish we had as it might have been before.
Well, that's what I'm saying. In the old days, that's the other thing too, is, you know, you could go next door and borrow a cup of sugar or something. So I think in the old days, that concept used to be that we definitely did know our neighbors back then. Now you don't really know them as much. So that was a lot of these concepts. So let's go back to Scandinavia. Do you know anything about the original, I mean, why they started these there? Was it kind of like what we're doing now? They were seeing that people weren't living in the, you know, multi-generational families weren't close any longer, or neighborhoods were changing there? Or why do you think this whole concept of living began?
Well, certainly I think that in the Scandinavian countries, there is a lot of emphasis on kind of family and neighborhood. And and this is true of many other cultures, and I think they're very much that way, to see the benefits that come from a multi-generational community, that older people can teach younger kids, that younger kids love being around that. I think that there's this notion that everything doesn't have to be, that there are things that we can share, that we don't have to have everything unique. We're not doing any car sharing programs right now, but we've talked about it. We do have all of the cars completely out of the community. So when you get your groceries, you park your car, and then you put your groceries in a 2-wheeled cart and roll it to your house. And by doing that, it means that anybody in the community can walk around the paths in the commons without worrying about, you know, getting run over by a car. And similarly, kids can be out playing and you don't have to worry about them. So I think that this notion of making sure really creating community, I think their conception was, what's the best of what we thought of as community? What are we losing, and how do we regain it? And it's really been going for quite a while now. I don't have the exact date of when the first co-housing community happened in Scandinavia, but it really it's been tested long enough now, at least 40 years or so, that people know that it works.
And was Santa Fe one of the first ones in this country, do you know?
It was not the first, it was in the first, we'll call it first generation of co-housing communities. There is a lot of desire to learn from each other. That we do. I won't say there's as close a network as might be nice among other co-housing communities, but there is a co-housing association, and there is this notion of how are you doing something, what works for you, what doesn't. And like any experiment, that you might say is there are going to be things that work well one place and don't work well in another. For instance, we have a rule of for homeowners of 8 hours of community service per month per adult, and that's done so that we have cooking crews at dinners, and we have cleanup crews at dinners, and we get the grounds work done that we need to do. We have energy that's put into the community each month. And there are other places that don't have that kind of work requirement, and things happen when you don't have a work requirement, when you don't have an actual engagement by the community into itself. Different things happen. It becomes sometimes just another group of houses. You know what I mean?
Right. And so like in the winter, if it snows here, somebody like if maybe you're elderly and so a neighbor would clean the snow, shovel the snow for you.
I get up pretty early in the morning, and in the wintertime, I might get out really early in the morning, and there is somebody that's already started shoveling the snow. No, it is totally that way. There's this sense of like, okay, 2 or 3 people that are early risers, they get out and they do that work before anybody's ever walking on it. So, I mean, it is really interesting to see kind of how that self-initiative works and how people take on their specialties. You might be really interested in gardening. I might be interested in the process of decision making or sustainability or other things like that. So we all, I wouldn't call them hobbies, but I would say they're passions. When you put a group of 70 or 80 people together, they're going to have different interests and passions, and that's what makes a community vital and vibrant.
And what attracted you to the Commons, and how long have you lived there?
We've lived here for 9.5 years. My wife, Esha Chiocchio, was in a book group with a number of women, and a couple of them lived here at the Commons. And so she always loved coming over here. We had been involved with a couple of feast days, the annual event that we put on in the fall. And basically she got a call one day from one of her friends here who said, there's a house coming up on the market. People are going to be moving back to the Northeast, and we want to let you know about it before anybody else knows about it. And so, like often happens here at the Commons, the house never went on the market. We went and looked at it. I came back from a 3-week trip to China and was totally jet lagged, basically got back at midnight on a Saturday or something. And then that following Sunday morning, I'm doing a house tour. We have enjoyed that. Our kids were in their single digits when we started here. They're both teenagers now. And it's been a great environment for them and a great environment for us.
And then in terms, you were saying that the kids grow up, your kids are now in their teens. How is this whole concept of multi-generational living, how are you going to replace that with like other kids later? I mean, like smaller kids again. Is it when people die and then you then say, well, we have to focus on trying to get a young family with little kids here, or how do you do that?
Well, I would say that is the big challenge of co-housing communities, because kids grow up and kids go off to college and kids start their own lives. You're always aging out the younger group. And we've had as many, while we've lived here, we've had as many as 25 kids under the age of 18. I'd say we're about a dozen right now. Okay, so, and at the same time, at the other end, especially people coming from out of region, if you imagine, I'll just make it up, a retired anthropologist and a retired educator, and they both love the outdoors. They've been coming down to New Mexico for a couple of decades. They're alive and vibrant and want to be very involved with community, but they're, you know, both in their 60s or early 70s. And they come in and they're like, hey, we're here. This is such a great community. We want to be a part of it. And we're like, on the one hand, we individually, we absolutely want them, you know, there because they are that, you know, great people. On the other hand, we're like, you know, we really want to bring in younger families. And of course, older people later in their career are able to afford a house in Santa Fe and maybe even buy it for cash instead of a mortgage. And younger families have tighter pocketbooks and different priorities. And so it is an ongoing discussion. It's an ongoing challenge for us. You know, one of the ways we're often doing it though is to really look to the kinds of families that we might be able to get into a house when it comes up for sale. And we've been able to do that a number of times. It's an imperfect process, but it is, I would say, probably the singular challenge of keeping co-housing communities vibrant from generation to generation and avoiding having them turn into what you kind of, your Freudian slip at the front end was a retirement community. It is very easy for co-housing communities to become that if they're not thinking proactively about the benefits of a multi-generational community.
And what is the cost of, I mean, Santa Fe, as we know, is very expensive to live in now. What is the, so are the, if something were to come on the market there, are the houses just like the kind of the exact same as any other house in Santa Fe, or would they be more expensive because you're a special place, or?
Well, I think they're going to fall probably mid-market on a per square foot basis. You could get probably more house for less per square foot if you're just in a neighborhood, but you also own 1/28th of the common property. So that plaza out there, the placitas that, there are 4 placitas in one plaza, you own a 28th of that. You own, you know, a 28th of the garages and the orchard and all that kind of stuff. So I would say, you know, we're affordable, but we're going to be in the mid to upper range per square foot. And so, like, if you're just going for that component, then, you know, you don't live in a co-housing community, but the co-housing community is giving you like access to the common house, aside from pandemic. If you wanted to have a wedding reception there, you want to have a Sierra Club meeting there, we have folk music groups that meet. And so there are a whole wide range of cultural events that happen in the common house that you can take advantage of. We have 3 guest rooms. So let's say that you have family or friends coming from out of town, but you don't have a spare bedroom. There are 3 guest rooms there that are possible to rent at a very reasonable rate for us to be able to bring in friends and family. So there's all sorts of benefits that are some tangible, some less so.
And is there a monthly fee for all these benefits, or like a co-op kind of thing?
So our association fees are a lot lower because of the work component. So our association fees are less than $100 a month. But then on top of that, for instance, Esha and I, we're both over 18. That means that we have 16 hours a month of community time that we put in. And of course, let's call that whatever it is right now, $16 an hour or something like that. That's that extra value that we're putting into the community in the process. So, and then, you know, the guest rooms are not free. So there's, you know, you're going to pay for those on a per night basis, but that money goes back into the community fund. It goes straight back into and building the community. If you have a group over that's an out of community group, then you're expected to make a small donation for the use of the facilities. And that again goes back into the common fund. But if you're doing something that's intra-community, no charge.
And then are there any other types of communities such as yours in the state of New Mexico, or are you the only ones?
Well, I wish I could answer that better than I can. Tres Placitas is down the street. And I'm spacing right now the name of, there's a more senior community that's here in town as well. That's kind of a semi co-housing community. There are definitely groups that are trying to form co-housing communities in the state. I know there's at least one group in Albuquerque that's looking to do it. It takes a lot of work to get a community going. You've got to find the land, you've got to figure out the financing to get things going. We had the benefit of somebody who was a professional developer. And so he knew how to bring everything together and make it work while the first few houses got built and, you know, the first landscaping was put in. But, you know, if you imagine like you get a lot and you decide that you want to design a house and then put a house on that, that takes a period of time. Imagine planning a community of 28 homes. So anybody who wants to start a co-housing community, you know, they better figure that from the initial idea to the realization of it is going to be somewhere, you know, in the 4 to 10 year range, depending on what's involved.
And probably for your group there, it's probably better to know somebody there to maybe try to get in, because you don't generally put them on the market. Is that what you?
No, but people are always inquiring. And so we do respond to anybody who's like, you know, I'm looking for this, I'm looking to rent an apartment, I'm looking to buy a house. We get inquiries every single week on that.
And if somebody said, you know, we're a young family starting out, we have 3 toddlers, or, you know, between the ages of 3 and 7, would you put them on like a priority list? It's like, yeah, we want young people. Would you do something like that?
But we would definitely put, yeah, we would definitely put them on like, you know, keep them on our list of, hey, something's coming up. I would say though that there's 2 components to that. So it's one is, you know, a young family with kids, but at the heart of this community, it functions best when people know why they're coming to this community. In other words, if you're just looking to buy a house and you happen to like the fact that we have big shady trees in the plaza, but you have no connection or passion about co-housing, it's not the right place for you. If on the other hand, you go like, I love the idea of my 4-year-old and my 8-year-old being able to go anywhere they want within the commons and be safe and know that people are always looking out for them. Or that my mom, who has to walk around in a walker to get her exercise, will be watched out for by other people. Like if she ever encountered a problem, she could knock on any door in the commons and know she was going to get help. You know, you have to be geared up for that. You have to see the advantage of that way of living.
And so I take it you vet these applicants. You know, you'll talk to them and say, this is what's expected of you and this is what we do here. So you try to like let people know, you know, ahead of time that, you know, like you just said, this may not be for you if you're not into community.
Yeah. So we want people to read the mission statement and some of the documents that form the heart of how we function as a community. We want them to come to a business meeting. We want them to kind of see how we communicate, how we do things. You know, that being said, we're not like a New York condominium association that, you know, can be like really, really hardcore kind of thing. We're looking to be inclusive. And, you know, I would say we're looking to get to yes for people if, you know, if they're ready to come here. I mean, ultimately, the sale is between the homeowner and the new homeowner. It is not a dictation by the community of who's going to get it. There's guidance from the community. There's support from the community. But, you know, if we saw the perfect family that had a couple of kids and they were trying to move in, but you know, somebody else came in with a cash offer that was 20,000 higher, and the people owning the house wanted to go that way, that's still their prerogative.
I understand. Well, good. Well, it's an interesting concept for sure. And I'm glad that you allowed me the time to interview you. Our time is up now. Just to let people know that these types of things do exist, not just in, you know, in Europe, in this country. And it's another way of life that, I mean, I guess a lot of us have forgotten that was the good old days. But want to thank you. Is there anything else you want to end with at this point?
No, just I would say if co-housing interests you, our website is, I believe, santafecohousing.org. And, but I would just type into your whatever browser you use, what is co-housing, and see what comes up. And there are videos out there, there are discussions out there. And if nothing else, it might encourage you to think about your own particular neighborhood differently and how you might want to improve it.
Excellent. Well, again, I want to thank you, Jamey, and we'll stay in touch. How's that?
Okay, thanks, Anna.
Thanks.